If you know me, you know the Father, and now you have seen him. We're told that Jesus said that. If you know me, you know the Father, and now you have seen him. What does it mean to know someone? Why was it important to Jesus to say that? Several weeks ago, at the end of a church service, that I was delighted with, which never happens with me, a gentleman very senior in the church stopped by and with great joy and gladness said, "God is good, isn't he?" And I found I could not respond. I was unable to respond. This was 2 weeks ago. This morning I went back to that church and was also delighted with the service. Far from perfectly so, but I was delighted with so much that I saw in the service. So glad. And the same gentleman came by, and I asked if he had a moment, and he said that he did. And I recalled our encounter of 2 weeks ago where I was unable to respond to his question, and I said, I know now why I couldn't respond. I didn't know what you were asking me. And I went on to explain I couldn't know what you meant by God. In this world, I couldn't know that. There are millions of people that say they believe in God. And it is evident by their behavior that they mean close to a million different things by the word God. I couldn't know what you were asking me. I went on to say, if I had known that what you meant by God was the following, and my point isn't that this is correct, though I think it is, but that's not my point. If I had known what you meant, and if I had known that you meant, isn't God that we see exclusively, perfectly in the life and example of the man Jesus in Mark, Luke, and Matthew? That's what I mean by God. Isn't God great? I would have exploded with yes. It saved my life. It's given me a life worth living, better than suicide in this hell world we've created. Yes, God is great. But I went on to say, I couldn't have known that's what you meant. So I couldn't answer the question. We love Jesus. 2.5 billion people love Jesus. And close to 2.5 billion people have a different understanding. They have a different thing in mind when they say they love Jesus. We're 1,000 elite physicists elite physicists by virtue of tens of thousands of hours of study to say, I think Einstein is brilliant. Any of those 1,000 physicists could say, I agree emphatically, because they had an excellent idea of what the other physicist meant. But we don't do that with Jesus. We haven't spent tens of hours with his words, and if we have, we collectively, we with almost no exceptions, if we have, they have been superficial and, okay, I know what he meant. He didn't mean what he said. What he meant was, well, maybe that's correct, but it is not, by way of analogy, what those physicists do. They measure themselves by choice with what Einstein meant, not with what they wanted to hear. My point isn't to rebuke anyone. My point is to try and calibrate. Why did Jesus come? If not exactly to say, okay, you guys say that you worship God, you say that you love God, you don't. I'm going to show you what God is. I'm going to tell you with my words and example what God is. And if you spend your life devoted to understanding what you're seeing in me and what I'm telling you with my words, then you will know God. If you know me, and how long does it take to know someone? And that doesn't mean going to our imagination, although the imagination is involved. It means spending tens, hundreds, thousands of hours thinking about every mannerism, every word. Why did they say that? What are the other words? What light does it shed on what they said here? It takes our whole being to understand someone, holding ourselves accountable to them, not to our imagination. We don't do that with Jesus. Maybe it would be a good time for some of us to start. I don't know how far down the path I am, but I know I'm now thousands of hours into it. And my life is now worth living in this hell world. I highly recommend it. And I desperately want to join with some people that are trying to do the same thing, that by their time with his words and example in Mark, Luke, and Matthew, doing the same thing. And John also, the Gospel of John, if they integrate it with Mark, Luke, and Matthew rather than divorcing it as we do in Christianity. In the description is a user group just being attempted for those of us that are drawn into that level of commitment to understanding Jesus, for us to help each other, to dialogue. Look at it, join it, try it, leave it if you don't like it, recommend it to others if you do.